Welcome to the If You Build It, Will They Learn podcast, a show dedicated to modern learning and development. With your hosts, Daniel Mendonca and Scott Babcock.
It's podcast day. Welcome to the show. This is If You Build It, Will They Learn? I'm your host, Scott Babcock, and I'm here with my co-host, Daniel Mendonca. Daniel, a very happy birthday to you. We turned 50 today. How does that make you feel?
Makes me feel. I mean, there's part of me that's wondering how we're still doing this and how we're still here. But gotta give the people what they want.
Exactly. That's right. It is our 50th episode today. We're really excited to talk a little bit about how we came this far. Not sure we know, but we'll give it our best analysis we can. Revisit a few highlights from the show. Sabrina has picked her favorite moments that we're going to respond to and listen back to over the last 50 episodes. And we want to celebrate a little bit of the momentum to stay on theme with our monthly topic that brought us all the way to 50 and hopefully carries us all the way to 100 and beyond as we move forward. So really excited to just kind of revisit 50 episodes, Daniel. I actually have a little trouble conceiving that it's been that long.
There was a point last week, I think it was, or maybe it was before last week's recording, when I went back and listened to episode 2, which is one of my favorite episodes we ever did, actually, on microlearning, one of my favorite topics. And I was like, whoa, this is episode 49. We've been doing this for quite some time, almost a full year's worth of episodes.
Yeah, and
52.
Yeah, we've been at it a little longer than 50 because we took some weeks in between and things like that, some breaks here and there where we missed. Yeah. But so we've actually been at this a little over a full year. And just, crazy. Took us a while to get started. I'm sure we'll spend some time talking about how we got here, but I'm stoked. I think it's super cool. I'm excited. And honestly, the time does fly when you're having fun. And it's almost hard to believe it's been 50 episodes. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with some of our clips. And I think it's an excellent segue to another kind of just small topic. You may or may not have guessed that Daniel and I are not professional radio people, and we are not experienced podcasters, but this is something we have passion around from a topic perspective, and we wanted to have the opportunity to talk. So the reality is we're gonna make some flubs in all of this. We're gonna get a few things that go a little goofy. We may forget to turn on the monitor, if you will. Or leave our phone on silent. Those kind of moments will happen. We're embracing it, is the reality. We are both tend to be a little bit more slapstick and a little bit more goofy about the way we approach things. We're both a little nerdy about our topics, and we like our movies, and we like our kind of pop culture, so expect some of that. I am a huge dad joke proponent, so expect them to be awful most of the time, but I will throw them in whenever I can. And that's sort of the tone of our podcast, is we wanted it to be conversational and light. And while this is a serious time, it's not just to be serious or very dry. We are a fairly light group, and so we will touch on things that are learning development. We will touch on things that are completely not related to learning development, and we will try to keep it engaging as we go along. And clearly playing a little Nostradamus there. I don't think we've made one mistake at all in this entire podcast, so I nailed that one.
I'm pretty sure we have a TikTok account literally dedicated to our mistakes. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, they actually are some of my favorite moments is the bloopers. So if you aren't following us on TikTok, be sure to go over there. Sabrina regularly likes to make fun of Daniel and I for our general mistakes on a weekly basis. So, and they're a lot of fun, honestly. And look, we said from the beginning, we wanted this to be a fun podcast, have some lighthearted moments. And I think we've done that, for the most part. And we definitely are human, but I don't know if we're any better at being radio personalities yet or professional podcasters, but 50 shots at practicing, maybe we're getting a little bit better.
I think they say 10,000 reps is when you find perfection of something. So I'll tell you this, I'm enjoying it just as much. And it seems easier just to turn on the mics and get going than it did. I think, Scott, that first episode we had, that kind of pilot episode, you and I were quite nervous. We had a lot of retakes, a lot of redos, but looking back, I definitely learned a lot through this process and happy we're still here.
It would be interesting, not that I want to give Sabrina, well, maybe I do want to give her a whole bunch of work she has to do, but it would be funny to go back and listen to some of the original recordings and just find out all the places we cut out. Because I do recall we turned on the mics that first time, and there were probably 10 or 15 takes, just realizing how hard it is to sit in front of a mic and just talk for a bit and say things that sort of make sense, I guess. Your co-host, Daniel Mendonca. Daniel, that's not it either. Such a good blooper, and yet one we can't really use. Oh, well.
The mics, oh, they're hot.
It's a slow steam there today. Have you ever had a greater level of disappointment than when you've already ordered and then the fajitas go by and you're like, I've made a terrible mistake?
Scotty boy, whenever you're ready.
That was what Sabrina led with. Scott, did you watch The Bachelorette last night? I'm like, no.
Can I switch? I never switched my chair. Let me switch my chair 1 second. By saying that, now I've completely lost my train of thought. Ooh, boy.
Very, very professional. Very, very busy.
Professional, Daniel. Professional. I don't like starting on Mondays. I'm usually revved up, warmed up, ready to go on Tuesday. That's a better day.
Whoa. Don't tap the outsides of your headphones. Whoa.
Don't do that.
Completely lost my train of thought. Sorry, Scott.
Daniel. Yes, and I'm like, he's telling me to stop. Why is he telling me to stop? No, you were just playing the beat. Like you were drumming. I liked it. And then
that's a blooper.
All right, so it turns out we do make some mistakes. Yeah, good to know. All right. And based on that, you'd swear we had just the foulest mouths. I don't think we get bleeped very often, but yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, I think clearly the producer, Sabrina, does quite the job of editing because we tend to swear quite a bit. That's what I've learned. A couple of bleeps here or there, some frustrations. It's funny, Scott, one of those comments talked about Mondays, and we did used to record on Monday mornings, which typically never went well. Then we moved it to Tuesdays, and now we record Wednesday mornings. So we're really procrastinating. I gotta say, we really put the stress on Sabrina with the Wednesday morning recording.
Yeah, I don't even know if we've considered that fully, but I feel like we're just finding a sweet spot, and Wednesdays really seems to work for us. And as the divas that we are, we probably need to cater to that more than anything, I think. So one of the things that I find one of my favorite parts about that blooper reel is that for all the planning we do and trying to prepare and get organized, like some of the most organic stuff that that comes out of it is like accidental stuff. So like when you said hot mics for the first time and gave us the tss, like, and now that's just sort of become the running joke every time we turn the mics on, is that we're going to make some version of that. And I think that we've come up with a lot of little slogan tagline type moments because of it. So
yeah, we also had a very in-depth conversation around fajitas. I know a lot of people who have commented to me. I actually had a customer who, when I got on the call, and they were like, so you really like fajitas, huh? And I'm like, it's not about liking fajitas. It's about fajita regret, which is
that really was the message there.
Yeah,
is that sizzle when it goes by you and you didn't order them, you're going to make that part of your lament for the day. So although I do like fajitas, and it still does make my mouth water a little bit whenever I hear that episode. So
maybe we should have fajitas for dinner tonight. Interesting.
All of us just collectively make fajitas in our own homes, and then we'll get on
a
Teams call.
Have a little Teams call, fajita,
fajita talk.
I find with sorry, just to ask a follow up. UI UX is always UI UX. They're always tying them together. I guess my question would be, can you have one without the other? You said one ties into the other, but can you have one without the other, or do you think that you really have to, when you're looking at the holistic approach, you have to look at both?
I think you don't really get the value of each other one if you don't include both of them. If you just have a very skeleton looking design and it works really well, it might work, but you might not have the user engagement that you want to. And the same thing if you have something that's super pretty, super beautiful, looks super nice, and it just doesn't make sense, it doesn't get the goal accomplished, it's kind of useless. So I think that's kind of why they tie them together is because without the other one, it really doesn't make sense.
So guests, that kind of a flashback to one of my, I love UI UX. So it was a fun interview with Steven, and just I think it's fun whenever we get to bring guests on. I don't feel like we do it as often as we'd like to, but I'll do a shameless plug. If there's anyone out there in the listening audience who would love to be a guest on the show, and you've got a topic of something you'd want to talk about, please feel free to reach out to us. Email, Twitter, Facebook, wherever you can find us. YouTube chat, comments. We'd love to just find some new guests and bring people on. While we love talking to each other, it's fun when we get another perspective on the podcast too. So I think we enjoy it, and it's fun to get those topics kind of on the go in someone else's wheelhouse.
Yeah, Stephen was a great guest. I really enjoyed him. I know he was very early on. I think he still has one of the most listened to podcasts over time. His count keeps growing, even though it was very early on in the process. But from our perspective, UI UX and our creative kind of vision is something that we do very well at Halite. If I were to do a little humble brag, so having him here to talk about his vision and how he sees it, and what comes out on the screen or the page per se was great. I really enjoyed that interview and the insight into the, I guess, theory behind why things look and navigate the way they do.
Yeah, UI UX is. We'll do a little actual talking here about our topics, but UI UX gets a lot of they're sort of the unsung heroes in a lot of ways. They're not always super visible from a departmental perspective, but obviously, like, what they do is the one thing that everyone notices about your platform or your content or whatever, right? Whether it works, whether it navigates well, whether it's clean and efficient and looks nice and is acceptable, like, that's their work. And a lot of times you don't realize how much effort actually has to go into researching and looking at trends and things like that to make sure they do it right. And again, a lot of times you don't even know they're there, but their fingerprints are sort of all over everything we do.
Hot mics, and keep going down that garden path to whatever. The mics, oh, they're hot. Microphones, get them while they're hot.
Well, there they are. The hot mics are back again. Some variations on just how we've taken that sort of little fun gag and really played it out in every one of our episodes, I think, as we start. And it still makes me laugh. And honestly, give it at least a little bit of thought of, like, what can I do creatively different today? So whether it's acting like a ballpark vendor or whatever from Daniel's perspective, or doing a salsa dance along with it, whatever it is, like, I like that we put some fun to it. Yeah,
the hot mic thing, I mean, should we sell hot mic merch? Is the question we need to ask. Maybe we do a little charity fundraiser with hot mic merch. I'm just saying, could be something we do. But the hot mic thing, it's one of those situations that I love not letting things die. So, this one might stick around for a while.
I hope it never goes away. And on our 100th episode, we're still celebrating hot mics. Today's learner accepts that very readily. So I think the fact that we're able to introduce some of that probably just resonates with what they do and the way they consume content on a regular basis for their own personal lives. If that carries over a bit into their professional lives, that probably just makes that transition that much easier.
Yeah, for sure. And I think too, with these modern learners, as we call them, they have a lot of choice when it comes to consuming content. They can go to Instagram, they can go to Netflix, they can have a wide variety of libraries of content they can choose from, and we can then see trends of what people are gravitating towards. And it is a lot of the creative, more engaging content versus something that's more documentary based or nonfiction books. That's still something for some audience, but there's generally a wider acceptance for these more creative approaches, more engaging approaches. So when we see that, we can apply it to training and just try to appeal to these learning audiences, I think.
Another guest. It's like I said, we love having the guests on. Emma was a tremendously great interview. I love her passion around writing, and I think it showed in that interview quite a bit. And it's again, I love the perspective, but it's also fun to see their energy around the topic.
Yeah, that was. I know I just buttered up Steven a few times ago, but Emma was great to have on. She's been a great addition to the company, and our writing, like similar to UI UX, there's so many kind of pillars of the content we create and the information and the training that we put out in the world as a company, and hearing the theory behind it was I think great for our listeners, and was a very intriguing discussion around the modern learner and the modern instructional design, I guess, or creative writing, similar to our last week's episode on microlearning and how we're delivering content to modern learners the way they want it. That's really what the conversation was about, and she's really passionate about it, which I thought was fun to get that perspective.
That will wrap it up for us today. That was a terrible finishing. Hopefully you had a good time talking with me today, and we will talk to you next week. I didn't like that ending either. We're gonna go again. Back in the office, back in the meeting, still screwing it up. Dang it. Hopefully you had a good time. I am solo, still screwing it up. Right. That will do it for everything. Nope, still wrong. Why is this so hard? I feel like I never have trouble with this. It's always very simple. But so on that one, there are days where the takes are hard, and you've got to do it over and over again. But my favorite part of that one is actually where I channel my inner Philip Rivers and just give it a solid dang it. For anyone who hasn't followed Philip Rivers' career, former NFL quarterback now, constantly talking and just has the most polite way of cursing ever. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, the things I learned from that clip when I saw it come out. Number one, Scott really can't do this without me. Solid. He falls apart and just can't get it done. I feel like I'm the glue. He may carry the load here, but I'm the glue that holds everything together. So,
I mean, when he shows up to the episodes, I'm just saying that's the important thing there that I took away was that somehow I end up flying solo a lot. So no, it is true though. It is a very different experience when you're talking to yourself through a podcast, which Daniel has done as well. So it's not like it's just me, but it is easier when there is someone else on the other side of the mic who kind of helps you have that conversation and carry some of the weight for you for sure. So.
Yeah, I've seen that like the instructors that sell courses online do this really well. People who have a specialty that they want to share and monetize. So like udemy.com, people on udemy.com, the people who are successful there tell a really great story about why their potential learner should take this course on Photoshop or even instructional design or learning experience design. They have a good enough story or a strong enough pull for the learner to know, okay, this is what's in it for me, and this is why I should pay to take this course. And so that's kind of also incentive based, I think. So I like to look to see what people are doing in that respect too. And a lot of times they're not formal instructional designers. They're just people who have an expertise and they put together a course they want to sell. So you can get inspiration from lots of places.
Another great guest of ours was Nyla Spooner there. You heard her in the clip, and it was fun for that one because it branched a little bit outside of Halite for us. It was one of our first guests that was not within our own organization, so we were able to bring some expertise from external, which was cool. And for anyone who's interested, she has a great follow on Twitter at Nyla LXD. Little shout out to her, a little plug for her Twitter page as well there too. So had a lot of fun just talking with her about more the traditional level of instructional design, which kind of balances when you listen to sort of the Emma podcast, the interview with her, where we talk a little bit more about how creative writing also has an element in there. So mixing those two together was a really solid approach to understanding all the levels of writing that exist out there.
It was Nyla's has a lot of initiatives going on with herself that I think that you guys should dig into and revisit, because I think she's doing some great things in her community around the idea of instructional design, learning and development, and what that looks like. And I think that she has a great, very traditional approach to instructional design. And I said, Emma comes from a creative writing background. And it was, like you said, Scott, across the course of 50 episodes, we've really seen a lot of different perspectives on the same topic, and seeing that from the writing perspective for e-learning and trainings was great.
So one of the things that I hope we do well, as Daniel and I, we don't take ourselves too seriously. So it's fun that we get to take a moment to kind of giggle and laugh at ourselves and put something out there that makes us enjoy the holidays or a special event and I don't know, again, be goofy. I think that's something we really both enjoy is adding a little humor, a little laughter to our conversations. And while this wasn't necessarily a podcast episode, but it was part of the podcast family, and so it was good to have that out there too, and just have a little joy, a little fun. We're always talking about positivity.
I just want to say I look good in elf costume.
You do. Yes, the green tights really accentuate your calves there. That's the goal. Soccer calves.
I think my favorite part about this is just another example. You saw this with our TikTok account. This is another example of Sabrina just doing things without telling us first, and that are pretty much designed to make fun of us. The first time she did this, by the way, Sabrina was not in it. And that's how I know she was doing it to poke fun at us. So, sometimes we make her get up at 8 a.m. or earlier to be here for this recording. So maybe, it's a little payback sometimes.
Yeah, I was glad that we were able to force her to put herself in as part of the overall podcast family. We weren't going to let that slide. So
part of the family, I think she does the heavy lifting in most cases.
She's she might actually be the glue that keeps this thing running.
That's probably true.
But Greg also came to us and said that he really liked the podcast. So we always love a good listener story. More importantly, he actually has some really good stories around how he's taken a couple of things he's learned and applied that back to his business and the way he trains his sales associates in his business as well. Maybe, Greg, just kind of walk us through, obviously COVID has thrown a bit of a curveball to everybody. What have you taken from maybe some snippets or tidbits from the episodes and how applied that? And then what have you seen from a result?
Sure. So it's been a whole new world when you leave a very large organization that has a huge training infrastructure. You have trainers at every location. You have regional trainers. You have corporate trainers. Learning and development is a huge part. And you have training manuals and processes and the whole thing. And so when you leave and you go out and you create a new organization and you create the infrastructure of that, you realize, okay, now who's the trainer? That trainer automatically then becomes you as a new business owner. Building that training process is exactly what that is a process. And you think you're doing it the right way, and you put a lot of time and effort and energy into it. And all of a sudden you look down and you have a 75, 80 page training manual and you feel really good about it. And then you sit down and you go through, a week or two of going page by page. And then it's like, okay, team, let's go. And you realize that that's not effective. And during COVID, consumer confidence and the way a buyer transacts is completely different today than it was 6 months ago. It doesn't matter if you're a small business on the corner selling cupcakes or you're Nike, big mega corporations. There's an adjustment period now that has to change. And if you're not learning throughout this transition and through this time, you're going to really miss the boat. And I really dove in, to this podcast and dove into, okay, how can I become a better leader through training and execution? It's really done an amazing thing. So one of the big pieces I took from the podcast is really micro learning. And that's something that stuck with me, because you can sit somebody in a classroom for, 3 hours and then expect them to go execute. That's not realistic. And it took me really taking a huge gut check, saying, hey, am I doing this the right way? And putting, kind of your ego aside and wondering, is there a better way? During COVID, so we're a hospitality company, hence the name Vacations for You. We're a hospitality company in a pandemic, yet the month of August is the largest month from a revenue standpoint we've had in organizational history, right? Just by taking some of the things that we've learned, or I've learned, and my team's learned from the podcast, over the past 6 months, really adjusting it and tweaking it to execute it at a really high level.
Well, I love a good glow up from a listener. Like, there's nothing better than having somebody brag on us. That's fantastic. And I'll be honest. So from all of our interviews, and I have a lot of them, and they're all special, like your children. They all have a unique one. I'm probably a little bit biased. So Greg is obviously a friend of mine, and is actually my oldest son's baseball coach. And so I loved being able to just sit and talk with him and bring him in. But one of the things that I think is the best part about that interview is, man, that's a whole different perspective on training for us. So often we focus on talking to someone who's in the industry a lot, and whether they're doing design or writing or content development or even just organizational strategy, whatever it is. We rarely talk to someone who's just trying to implement something that is getting produced by somebody like us. And so it was good to have that feedback. And you heard Greg talk about it a little bit, just how he's had to adjust. And when he didn't have that infrastructure behind him, like how that changed his viewpoint. And I'm super glad that as a podcast, and I hope it's happened more than that we reached somebody and gave them some ideas. That's really always been our goal, is to try to help people find ways to execute or think differently.
Yeah, Greg probably stumbled across our podcast because of your friendship and the fact that he coaches your son. But I think he's probably one of our most dedicated listeners in the event and executioners of some of the things we've talked about. Been able to take executioner is a funny word. It definitely means what I wanted it to mean by definition, but took me to a whole different place. Made me think Game of Thrones, Ned Stark, that whole gig. Anyways, I digress. Greg definitely puts a lot of the things we talk about into practice. The concept of microlearning was something he's asked us about, and I know Scott talked to you about even more. So it was great to have him on. I enjoyed that discussion a ton. I enjoyed all the blooper reel throughout of you guys shushing your boys in the background. No, it was great to have Greg on. Always like to have a listener on, and someone who has a different perspective from the small business world.
Yeah, it was for a long time. I think much like our parents or some of our close friends, we always expect like a pity listen every once in a while. Somebody just come in like, "Hey, I know you all listen," but Greg truthfully brings it up like every Friday, and he's like, "Oh, loved this part," or ask questions. And so I actually love that he is embracing it and enjoying it, and hopefully others are as well. But yeah, I think that's before the age of blooper reels for us. There's probably some good content that lives in that whole thing. Although I think maybe we had a couple from Greg where he was learning how hard it is to sit in front of a mic. So
I think we definitely did. So no, it was definitely a great episode.
welcome into the show. This is the If You Build It, Will They Learn podcast, a new podcast dedicated to modern learning and development. I'm Scott Babcock, and I'm joined as always by Daniel Mendonca, our co-host for your show.
How's it going, Scott?
I am doing well. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Excited about this first recording.
I was gonna say, do you know what day it is? It is podcast day, my friend.
It is podcast day. Although in the self-isolation world we live in today, all the days kind of just blend together.
Someone called it Blur's Day, I think, which I thought was appropriate. But yeah, so today we are kicking off our first episode of the first season of what I hope is many of both to come. We are starting this podcast adventure with you, and we're really excited. I think this is going to be a cool adventure for us, something new for us to try, and hopefully provide some value back to you. So I think it is always important to start at the beginning, and you probably are wondering who you're listening to. So Daniel, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself? Wow. So that one has, I watched Daniel's face as we were listening to that one, and cringeworthy is the face that I think both of us were giving. I totally forgot that there was a period in the beginning where I was introducing us twice, basically. Like I was doing the lead in and the intro. Yeah, we learned some stuff, and we talked about it. Like sometimes things just organically come through. We ditched the welcome to the show. It's podcast day. So
it's I'll tell you, this is a little tidbit for the audience. The first time we gave a description of who we were as human beings, what we like to do, Scott described a person that was the furthest from himself, actually. He went down this live music path, and Scott's not a guy who walks around the honky tonks in Nashville to listen to live music. It was a pretty funny experience. And, Scott's obviously brought up his wife before on the podcast, but she was the one who was like, who is this guy you're describing? And what did he do with my husband? So that was a pretty funny, it's funny what nerves will do to you. I was on a call the other day and I told somebody I was born and raised in London, but that's not true. I was born in London, definitely not raised there. So, you get nervous sometimes and some things come out.
FYI, that's London, Ontario, I believe he's referring to, not London, England, which would have made it really funny if that's where he said he was from. But you can obviously hear the accent, the British accent coming through. But no, I went on a rant. I went on a full-on description of a human being that I've never met before and tried to pass them off as myself. I kind of forgot we had to actually re-record that whole segment because it was brutal listening to Daniel and I try to talk about ourselves and how flustered we got and lost. But that happens from time to time, I've learned. But hopefully we've cleaned some of that up. And overall, I hope we've gotten a little bit better. Constantly learning, trying to improve. But honestly, this has been a fun episode, just kind of reliving some of our past moments and listening to bloopers and some of our embarrassing flubs that have come along and finding out that we're both very foul-mouthed individuals apparently during some of our rants when things don't go well. But so I honestly, it was a good time to just reflect on what 50 episodes has brought us. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that as well, and maybe spark some memories for you along the way. But we still want to finish the show with our positivity points. We want to bring a little energy, little excitement, some happiness to the audience on things that are going on in our world. And hopefully shed a little sunshine your way as well. For me, I'm going to, so after giving Daniel a bunch of crap about not showing up to some episodes, turns out he's going to be rolling solo next week as I'm going to ditch out. My wife and I are celebrating our anniversary, and since we are now both COVID vaccinated, we are heading on vacation for a week and getting away and going sans kids, going adults only. So I think that's really exciting. And we will be on the beaches of Mexico next week. So really excited about that. And just getting away for a little bit and leaving Daniel alone on the mics and seeing what kind of trouble Sabrina and he can get into.
Oh, I'm excited about that. I'll tell you, jealousy is a real thing with Scott going on vacation, seeing as my borders are still closed over here in Canada. But my positivity point of the day, which to be honest, up until about 2 minutes ago, I had no idea what I was going to say. Just scheduled my vaccine. So that's a positive. I feel momentum in, progressing towards, this pandemic coming to an end, or at least being in a manageable situation where normal might be a thing. So I am in my new environment. I do need some things on the wall in my office. Don't worry, there's going to be some nice shelves back here. I got my Iron Man head, Scott. I'm going to have some of my favorite Pokemon cards hanging out behind me now. So I'll be able to match R2-D2 over there very soon. So happy to be back, and solo project, looking for that to go down next week. So I'm excited about it.
Very exciting stuff happening in all the ways. I'm glad to see how you're going to nerd out alongside me here. That'll be good. Share a little bit more personality with the audience. By the way, it took a lot of convincing to let my wife put that shelf up in the office. She was not a big fan, but I feel like it's tasteful. It's a tasteful nerdery. That's what's happening right there. All right, that will do it for us today. Hope you enjoyed the show. And by we, I mean Daniel. We'll talk to you next week. I'll be back in a couple weeks. Have a good one, everybody.
Have a good one.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the If You Build It, Will They Learn podcast. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Join the conversation by emailing us at podcast@haylight.com. Find us on social media at Build It, Learn It, and be sure to check us out on the web at www.haylight.com. That's HALIGHT.com.